Hi, welcome back to another episode of Cold Stream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're going to try and put Brenda's Roadster back together some. Last week's video, we had to pull the transmission out and then secure the sleeve that the throat bearing rode on, and basically troubleshoot as to what the problem was. We also found out that the radiator was bad into it, and that also the alternator wasn't charging. So I hear that the alternator has been checked out and it's going to come back. We'll put it back in. We do have the transmission put back together again, and I plan to put it in here. I'm going to make a little cradle underneath so that I can jack it up and put it back in place. The radiator, it may be a couple weeks. We've ordered a new one. It's coming from the US. I think it's more than likely still a Chinese-made radiator, but it's a much better quality radiator as far as I can tell. The same brand as what we've used in the other cars. So we'll get what we can done on Brenda's Roadster, try and get it back together again, start it up and check the clutch, get the alternator back into it, and then I'm going to go back over and we'll start working on Ellie's coupe or Brian's coupe and get something else done to it. So follow along. Today we're back in the garage working on Brenda's Roadster after fixing the transmission and staking the sleeve that was sliding. Now we have to put the transmission back in the car. So I've been working on this for probably about 4 hours. It wouldn't have been very nice to see time lapse because it was all kinds of comedies of errors and trying to do different things. But at the end of the day, what we had to do was we actually had to tip the engine back like this so that we could push the 39 style bell housing up into the transmission tunnel. So the issue was, because of the way I designed this transmission tunnel, it's a little dark there. I don't know if I can get the light. There's a little bit of light. So because I did the transmission tunnel like this, which I would normally do for any other kind of transmission, like C4s, C6s, any of the other transmissions that have a full bell housing, you would undo the bell housing from the engine block. But in this case, because it's like a bell housing that's split in two, it's like the 39 Ford style transmission, kind of half bell housing on the transmission, half the bell housing on the engine. In order to fit that in, everything had to be tilted back much more in order to slide the engine and transmission back in. Now, when I took it out, I just took it out, the 4 bolts in the transmission, dropped it, and then slid the adapter back. But because when you put these together and you put the throat bearing and the clutch fingers and everything onto it, you put everything together with the adapter that's there. I'll go underneath here and kind of try and show you. If you watch the previous video, you'll see the transmission. So right now I've got everything in. In order to tilt the engine back, I had to undo the headers because when I started to tilt the engine back, the whole exhaust system basically kept the engine up like this. So just that little tilt. I know if I have a lift and I had a transmission jack, this would be a whole lot easier, but this is not normally what we do here. This is kind of unusual that we have to do this, but here's the underneath view. I'll grab the light and I'll show you. And of course, when you tilt the transmission, you lose all the transmission fluid on the ground. So had a couple jacks here, one there to tilt the engine, to support the back of the engine, another one right here. And then as I went, we just kept on cribbing it up with the 2x4s until we got it into position. And just like half an inch at a time, just work your way through. But right now we're in the process of, we're going to have to bolt everything back up. I am not going to take it down off of the blocks when I start it up, just in case something else goes wrong. So I'm going to carry on, hook the drive shaft up, hook the shifter up, hook the clutch mechanism up, everything else, and get her ready to kind of give her a little test try here. Anyways, we're making slow progress here. So I just did that little spiel there about the 39 style transmission adapter, and I just reviewed the video and didn't quite show it. I made my explanation, but right there is the adapter plate that goes onto the T5 transmission. There is the 39 style half bell housing that's attached to the 49 to 53 flathead. So basically the bell housing is two pieces. The issue that we had is when this was attached to the T5, trying to slide the half bell housing up past the transmission tunnel that I built, it wouldn't fit. So that's why we had to basically, tilt everything back so, everything would slide up this way. So sorry about that. But there it is, the two pieces to the bell housing. So right now we got everything hooked back up again. I have the shifter in place, the emergency brake lever is in place, the clutch slave cylinder and the lever are there. It's adjusted to where I think it should be, kind of thing. We will have to start it up and try. The lever doesn't have to go too far once it engages the clutch to basically release it. It feels okay, but we'll see. The drive shaft is hooked up. We've got the headers all bolted down and everything else, and that's kind of as far as we can go right now. The alternator is supposed to arrive tomorrow. The alternator tested out okay, except that this particular one-wire alternator, I guess, has to spin pretty high for it to start charging. When they put it on the charging testing unit at the automotive electrical supply place, they ran it up to speed, and once it got up to a certain RPM, it charged no problem. But it appears as though it's got to be spinning pretty fast in order for it to work. So there is a trick, I guess, to hook it up. I guess you hook a couple wires up to the side plug into it. Anyways, I do have a diagram. I'm either going to cover it in this episode or I'll cover it in the next episode whenever I can get the plug. And I'll show you how to hook the alternator up so that it will still charge at low RPM. I didn't have to do that with my other cars, but this particular one-wire alternator, I guess, requires this jumper or whatever to get the regulator going. Anyways, watch along in this episode, or worst case, I'll cover it next episode. I'll show you exactly what to do if you have the same problem. And then also radiator, I don't know when it's coming. It's ordered, should be here in the next week or two. So right now, that's as far as I can go with Brenda's Roadster to try and fix some of the issues that we have. I'm going to switch over to the other garage and we're going to start working on Brian's Coupe. So back in the other garage here with Brian or Ellie's Coupe. Last week what I did was I attached and repaired the B-pillar on the driver's side. That's all welded in place, and it still could be tacked in, but I mean, I've got a really good fit right now. One of the things a couple areas we could work on next would be the wood that goes over the top of the door. That's one thing we could work on. The other thing would be to continue to working on attaching the sheet metal to the subframe where I've got all these vice grips here. But in order to do that, I wanted to make sure that the back of the coupe was in pretty square shape. Now, the lower tailpan section is not bolted in really tight right now, but there was a brand new deck lid that came with this in a box from Brookville. So what I did is I set it in place just to kind of get the feeling for where the back end of the car was, whether I put it in there right, whether it was twisted or bent. And it appears as though it's as good or better than the other ones I worked on. I think by the time I get the hinges in place, it looks to be relatively square, especially when I bolt all of this stuff up. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working on the back of the car. I'll probably drill the holes here and do the spot welds so that we weld the inner fender welds to the subframe. And there's a bunch of sheet metal pieces here. I'll show you in a couple seconds. So all we have right now is just this tailpan. There's no inner structure or any supports that go with it. What I did when I built the other two cars, the Moncton Coupe and the New York Coupe, is that I made all of those pieces, and then what we're going to do with this one, we're going to do the same thing. I've got one of the drawings right now for one of the pieces, which will probably be the first one I do. It's a support piece that goes actually in behind this lower deck lid. I'll take the deck lid out in a few minutes, and I'm going to go over to the other Roadsters and I'll show you kind of what it should look like, and then we'll see that everything is missing here. So I'm going to try and do this by holding a deck lid up. I've got nothing to keep it in place right now. We're storing some of the pieces in the back of the Camera Lady's Roadster. So the pieces that we have to make are, there's this piece, there's this piece here, and then there's a piece that goes in behind here on the lower deck lid panel, and there's another piece below that. And then, I don't know if we can show it or not, but yeah, there's a little support piece that we need to make as well, right there. They all kind of bolt in together and then basically reinforce the back of the car. There's a small piece of a floor extension here, which we do have for it. And then there's also the drip rail supports here. And then Brian's car is actually missing, right there, he's missing some of the drip rails also. So all that stuff has to be fabricated for Brian's coupe. And then as well, you can see that there's a rumble lid support, and then there's a support over there that would go up to the deck lid hinges. They're missing on there. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we need to make for the coupe. I mean, it's going to take a couple episodes. I mean, the good thing is I've got patterns for it all, and I've made it all before, so it shouldn't take too long, but certainly can't do it all in one episode. So right now we're going to focus on making the first piece, which is the reinforcing piece for the lower deck lid, and then we'll work away at the other pieces. So here's kind of what we're dealing with the back of Brian's deck lid here. There's basically nothing there. So as you can saw from what I tried to show you from the Roadster over there, a Roadster and a 5-window are very, very similar in this area. The difference being that on a 5-window, this deck pan here, I think is about a 1/2 inch longer. And then the drip rail supports there are slightly longer as well, but essentially everything else is the same and they go together the same way. So as you can see there, whoever did this before, they tried to repair the drip edge supports there, this triangular shaped piece. So we're gonna have to weld that up and clean it up on both sides. And then, like I said, I think I'm gonna start with the piece, it's a support or something, but basically a stiffener that goes up underneath here for the back of the lower deck lid, and then we'll work on the other pieces as we go. So what I'm going to start out here with is some 18 gauge metal. I've laid out my drawing that I did before. Now the last time I did this, I actually had an original copy from, made the drawing, and then used that to make the other duplicate pieces. But since then, I don't have one to go off of except for the ones in the back of the actual Roadsters over there. So this is the first time I'm going to try and make it directly off of my own drawing. There's a few steps to it. The first of which is I'm going to take a small bead roller step die. We're going to do this little black line here, right there. The second step is that there's across the top here, I need to put a bead it's about the center third. I can't remember exactly how far it is, but I'm going to go off of my other pieces. So I need basically this lip to fold up a little bit. So we'll put a bead going down here. This third step is I'm going to take the tipping dies, and you can see the scratch that I made here. I'm going to use the tipping dies to fold this up. So those are the three things that I'm going to do on the bead roller. Once I have that done, we're going to cut the excess off of these corners right here. And the third and, well, the last and final step is that there's a 90-degree bend that we're going to put along this line here. So I'm going to set the time lapse up the best I can. I'll set it up a little closer so you can see me bead rolling, and hopefully we'll show you all the steps to making this one piece. So there's the first step of making these pieces. Now, what I'm still going to have to do is take them over there on the stump with a hammer. And what I've got to do then is finesse kind of this line so that we have like an arc to it. So I basically started the crease with the tipping dies. I made my little groove here like I need to have it. But now what I've got to do is take the hammer and then work this edge so that I then have like a smooth kind of a curve. The curve equates to about 5/8 of an inch from one side to the other. So when I lay it on the bench down like that, the corner should stick up and then the center should be lifted up about 5/8 of an inch. Then what I'll do is I'll take it and then I'll trowel fit it over in the back of the lower pan and then trim or bend as necessary to make it fit. Now we're still not done yet, but basically now I more or less have that about 5/8 arc into it. I just trowel fitted it over against the back of the panel here, and we're kind of getting into the right shape. So this will go underneath the other side. Need to do a little bit more trimming. What I've realized is that this piece here is about 3/16 of an inch too wide, so I'm going to trim that up. And then also there is a from the drawing here, there's a little dimple that I now have to make right here. Now that dimple, basically this piece continues, and I'll have to make a little piece of sheet metal like this that welds on the end of it. And it's not shown here, it just gives a dimension, but essentially right about there is a hole, and that hole will line up with one of the 4 bolts. I believe it lines up with that hole there. So there's 4 bolts that normally go here to hold this plate in place, but that hole is going to be right there, which we're ultimately going to get on the end of this piece. So next up, going to make the little indentations here. Then we'll make this little piece and we're going to weld these onto it, and we'll hopefully wrap up making these lower deck lid stiffeners, I think is the correct term for this. The next step we have to do on this is this little dimple here I've indicated on the drawing. Now that dimple basically is going to allow for the nut to go in. So I've done it on this one already. I think you should be able to see it. So essentially you make a little indentation with the hammer. I'll show you in a second here, so that when I put this nut on, after the stiffener is put in place here, there's clearance for the nut to go on. So you can do it a number of different ways. All I did, I took the piece of sheet metal. I'll just try and do it with one hand right here. And then I've got a doorskin hammer, which has got a round profile here, and basically tapped until I got a little bit of an indentation here. Another thing you can do on the stump, I've got a hollowed out section. I could have easily have just put it in the hollowed out section there and just basically knocked a little bit of relief into it. I'm going to tidy it up just a little bit because I get a dent there, but essentially what that is, like I said, is just making a relief in the sheet metal so that you can put the nut in. Next up, we've got to make a little flange that goes across here, which will have a hole into it. So there's a little flange I was talking about that's welded on the outside edge of the part. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to put this stiffener in the lower tail pan. I'm going to crimp it up over the edge, like roll this edge down over it. And then what we'll do is we'll drill this hole through the side. And then probably what I'm going to do too, I'm going to weld this up as well to get that ready for future work as well. So there's a deck lid stiffener in place, and you might wonder, why in the heck did I focus on making that? Part of the reason is this deck lid, it basically stiffens this lower deck lid up and gives a shape that matches the deck lid itself. So what I wanted to do is basically square up the rear end of the body. I put the deck lid in place, and actually the sides, as I showed her previously, they're actually where they need to be. I spot welded all of the inner fender welds in place right now. I still got to go clean them up with a wire brush and everything else. I've got all my vice grips pulled off right now. I did make a spare one, which I'm just basically going to stick up on the shelf up there so that next time I go to make one of these, I'll have one to look at as well as the drawing. But they're not overly difficult to make. It just takes quite a bit of time to make them. So for now, the deck lid, the lower deck lid, is in place with two quarter 20 nuts and bolts on either side. What it takes is 4 to go in there. I got to go to the store tomorrow, get some more. And then the other thing is that what we normally do and what they normally do, Ford did, you put like a plate between the nuts and the panel to kind of something, well, this, I'll make another one of them up, is actually going to go there. So right now I'm kind of happy with the way that it fits. The back end of the car is stiffened up. I'm going to double check it again with a deck lid just in case. So this panel can still come out. That's not really a big deal. But we're going to inch forward as far as making the rest of the structure here, putting the floor in, putting the supports in, ultimately doing the drip rail. I mean, it's going to be quite a few more episodes in the future, but this is where we're going to start. So that's it for this week at Coldstream Rod Shop. Come on back next week. Hopefully we're going to have something more to show you on Brenda's Roadster. We'll get the transmission in, the alternate. Well, we've got the transmission in, as I showed you. We'll get the alternator back on, and hopefully a radiator will show up, and then either next episode or the following one, we'll take her for a test drive. But anyways, come on back next week, see what we're doing at Coldstream Rod Shop. Everybody take care and have a great weekend. Oh, and please like, share, tag, and subscribe.